corruption or heedlessness. Right? And the heedlessness is disliked. It's doing heedless things. So those are places we need to be careful of, where the primary activity becomes sinful. Places where it's permissible, but secondary activity is impermissible, then if you can readily avoid it, we strive to make the more wholesome choice. You could go to either this grocery store or that grocery store, but that grocery store doesn't blast questionable music. They don't put these fitness magazines in the front, etc. So you choose that which is more wholesome. Though, of course, even in a non-Muslim society, we call people to virtue. I know my own wife, the supermarket the chain store that we go to, I won't mention its name. At the checkout counters, they had these men's health magazines and this, that. She wrote a letter to the central office. She talked to the manager, said, well, this is policy. She said, look, this is family-based place and this and that, and many families don't want their children to see. Not talking from a Muslim perspective, but in general. And they changed it. They removed it from eye level, not just from the shelves, but they say such magazines should be higher so that many of our customers don't like that. We didn't bring, you have to use each place. You use wisdom. And at family weddings and so on, which is, we highlighted is particularly important, one of the practical things also is when you set a good example with good character, that if anything not permissible is going to happen, you step away. If it'll come back to sanity, you just come back. Then other people will also see, because a lot of people don't like it. So they'll also step out. And then people want the whole family to be together. And the other practical thing to do in these is to suggest halal alternatives. Because people want to have a good time, suggest, having positive nasheed. There's many, many things. They say in the permissible is sufficiency from the impermissible. So that's of the things that should also we should also strive to look at. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا بفيض فضلك رشدنا يا رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah, we are continuing to look in our lessons on the Tariq al-Muhammadiyya at the taqwa of legs. And we looked at avoiding the sins of the legs. Now some of the avoiding the disliked matters. Amongst them, he says, وَتَخَطِّي رِقَابَ النَّاسِ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ إِذَا لَمْ يَرَ فِي الصُّفُوفِ الْأَوَّلِ فُرْجَةً. It's from the taqwa of legs is not to walk over people in the masjid. And when they're waiting for prayer, whether they're waiting for prayer in general, particularly Friday prayer, if you don't see gaps ahead, because if there's gaps ahead, then people have been negligent, so they should have filled the gap, especially if it's a very clear gap. If there's a gap, the adab is that you try to walk around to fill the gap, but if one can't, then one sort of just gently nudges a person to the side to be able to walk past them. But to walk over them, why? Because it disturbs people, and disturbing people is contrary to the sunnah. And in that regards, he says, وَأَخْرَجَ التِّرْمِذِيُّ وَابْنُ مَاجَةَ عن سيدنا معاذ بن أنس رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من تخطى رقاب الناس يوم الجمعة اتخذ جسرا إلى جهنم. That whoever walks over people's necks on Friday, it's as if they've taken a bridge to hell. Why? Because people make dua against you. You disturb people. And sometimes people actually bump into people, right? And وَأَمَّا الْمَعَاصِي الْعَدَمِيَّةِ, right? There's also sins of omission, of failing to do that which is commanded with respect to legs or one's walking. So he says, the sins of omission, فَالْقُعُودُ عَنِ الْجُمُعَةِ وَالْجَمَاعَاتِ, it includes failing to walk to or go to Friday prayers and congregational prayer. In the case of men, Friday prayers are a personal obligation for resident adult men who don't have a recognized excuse for missing Jumu'ah. Work itself is not an excuse. Rather, one has to take the means to take leave from work. And in most countries, even non-Muslim countries, there is, they make reasonable accommodation for that. And especially now, more recently, because of people having more flexible work schedule, etc. One needs to take the means for that. And likewise, congregational prayer. Congregational prayer is an emphasized sunnah. Many even deemed it wajib. So, and the congregational prayer, it's not a requirement that it be in the mosque. It's optimal in a mosque, but even if it's not in the mosque, so if a number of Muslims pray in the same building or close by each other, they need to take the means to establish congregation. Of course, and the one who establishes it has the reward of not only their praying in congregation, but facilitating that for everybody until the end of time. And when one establishes a good practice, one shouldn't simply intend that to have the reward of everyone who actually benefits. One should intend that the benefit be till the end of time. Whether it's benefited from or not, you're rewarded for your intention, not just your action. So let's say some auntie establishes a well in rural Namibia, says, I want people, Allah reward me as long as people drink from this, until the water runs out. No, you intend that people drink from it until the last day. That's your intention. So don't limit your intentions with Allah. Okay. Likewise, وَالتَّعَلُّمِ وَالتَّعْلِيمِ, likewise, sitting back from teaching, from learning or teaching. Sitting back from learning or teaching. In the old days, you'd have to go to learn. So sitting back from it, particularly, and we earlier in the Tariq al-Muhammadiyya, in the work that we're covering, we looked at the fiqh related to, the legal rulings related to knowledge, but not the knowledge that you're personally obligated to know specifically. If you don't know it, you have to take the means to go and learn it. There's some general religious duties that all of us have, but then if you are beginning something and you don't have knowledge of it, you have to take the means to go and learn it. If you're starting a business, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while He has permitted trade and transaction, He's put limits in it. What is riba? What is usury? What is the fiqh of usury? What is gharar? What is deceptive uncertainty that Allah's Messenger has not permitted? What are the principles of permissible contracts? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set a wise, high standard that O people, do not consume each other's wealth in unlawful ways, in false ways. Rather, let it only be through trade on the basis of established mutual agreement. There are things, you cannot begin work with somebody, right, unless the contract is sound and clear. Now, if you don't know what the limits are, how can you observe them? And these avoid arguments between people. The number of times college students no longer talk to each other once they live with one another, and very often it's for a simple reason. They had no clarity regarding who's renting from the landlord and who's renting from that person. So the 2,500 for the apartment or for the townhouse, we're splitting it between us. But one person lost his job and one person went back to Karachi. There's only 3 left. Landlord, how much would the landlord want? 2,500. Now they say it was between us, so each of us was paying 500. It's going to lead to dispute, at least between them. Now the landlord says, no, the contract was with Ayman. Now Ayman says, you guys owe me 1/3. He said, we only agreed to 500. So it harms relationships that way. And they're cursing the 2 guys who went away. And could they go away or not? There's no agreement anyways. So these things lead to disputes. They lead to dispute within families, etc. And not learning, ignorance is pure harm. So not taking the means to learn, either the general religious literacy you need, but also the contextual, contingent religious literacy. There's people who spend years planning out their online business, or their sister starting entrepreneurship and they started a company. Have you looked at how you structure this in a not just one, in a permissible way according to the Sharia, but also in a praiseworthy way according to the Sharia? And so this is really, really important. This is very important. Imam Muhammad al-Hasan, the great student of Imam Abu Hanifa, one of his great students, was asked, why haven't you written any books on zuhud, on renunciation? And that's what the early title was amongst the Salaf for spirituality, was zuhud, renunciation. He said, because I've written many books on transactions. Because the true test of religiosity is not how you pray and fast, but it is how you deal with others, how you are with material and other rights and responsibilities. How are you in the fulfillment of your material and other commitments? And how do you know what you're bound by unless you take the means to learn? So those are critical matters that we are responsible for, but not taking the means to learn about them, right? Not going to learn about them is sinful. Likewise, if you don't clarify the questions that you don't know about. So you're having some problem, whether a question related to belief. You're confused. How exactly do we know the Quran is from Allah? Or you're confused, this argument from contingency, I don't get it. And you're a little bit confused. I believe, but you have this unease. Not taking the means to clarify a confusion related to faith, or a confusion related to your practice. That, okay, if I'm tired, can I pray Fajr sitting down? Sometimes you think, yes, I can. Sometimes you think, no, I can't. So you do it sometimes. And you remain confused. That's not permissible. Right? Because when you have a confusion, you have a duty to ask. That's also from learning. Likewise, not going to Hajj or Jihad, wal-Hajj wal-Jihad al-Fardain, not going on Hajj or Jihad when they become incumbent upon one. Right? So your land is attacked, and you say, you know what? I need to finish my university right now. No. There's circumstances, if your land is attacked, everybody is responsible for defending it. Right? And also, والدعوة التي ليس فيها منكر فإن الإجابة واجبة عند البعض والسنة مؤكدة عند البعض. Likewise, not accepting an invitation, particularly the invitation to the walima, because accepting the invitation is wajib according to some of the scholars from the Hanafis, because the Prophet commanded accepting invitations, and according to other scholars, and that's the predominant opinion, it's wajib, as long as there's no haram there. As long as there's no haram there. If there's outright haram, just don't go. Right? If there's outright haram, like the whole thing is it's fitna fest. Right? So they're giving it a Bollywood theme, and they're going in dancing, and they're singing songs throughout. Right? Someone asked me, why is it so bad? I said, do you normally go? I said, yes. I said, just review. What exactly were they singing when they went in? Is that halal? I said, no. So what else do they do? I said, Shaykh, this is a big problem. I said, so what do you think? Were you to ask the Prophet ﷺ, what would he advise you? I can't see him saying it's okay. So, okay. So what do you want me to tell you? I said, so what do I do now? So what's past, you repent. But you rectify going forward. There's other weddings that generally wholesome, but there's elements of problems. We stay away from those. But if they become primary, we step away. And if it comes back to sense and sensibility, we may return. If they don't, the night is young. A practical thing to do in those situations also is, the Prophet ﷺ gave us an amazing advice, which is you can't reach everyone through your wealth nor through your status. But you can reach everyone through your disposition and character, through a positive disposition and character. Nobody really cares if you stayed till the end. But if you go, and the sunnah is to uphold good character in dealing with others. So if you go and greet the key members of the family, go serve a little bit. Go take some tea to the old uncles and aunties. Ask how they're doing. And you do it for the sake of Allah, because these are sunnahs. You do it for the sake of Allah, but people notice that jilbabi lady over there, why is she not dressed? Looks like she's in a funeral. Whatever they're saying. Or Maulvi Saab is here. Oh my God. But if Maulvi Saab, or whatever they call you, is smiling, is serving tea to the elders, talking to the key members of the family, etc. How are you doing? And then when the bride and groom come, which is a challenge, because sometimes they come really late, especially in some cultures, you wonder, are they really coming? Did something happen? But they show up, so you go greet them, etc., talk to them, etc. Then if you disappear, nobody really cares. Oh, he didn't eat the food. If, at least the people paying for the wedding may be relieved that more guests came than you thought. At least some people left early. So nobody really cares, right? So a lot of times people are passive Muslims, right? Whereas the sunnah is to uphold good character. Deal with people on the basis of good character. If you do that, it doesn't matter how you show up, people you cannot help but respect those who have good character. But it's an important thing. Many people sort of use lame excuses for not attending weddings that are otherwise halal, otherwise wholesome. And in that regards, he relates some of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. أخرج البخاري ومسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه مرفوعا أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال شر الطعام طعام الوليمة يدعى إليها الأغنياء ويترك المساكين ومن لم يأت الدعوة فقد عصى الله ورسوله. In this hadith related by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, from Abu Hurairah, that the beloved Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the worst food is the food of the walima, because the wealthy are invited to it and the poor ignored. So the walima is a sunnah. We've been commanded to attend. We've been commanded to hold a walima. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَوْلِمْ وَلَوْ بِشَاءٍ, yani hold a walima even if you just with one sheep. They say even if there's no food, hold a walima, which is a wedding feast. Even in some countries, because it's become so exaggerated, like I was telling someone, a friend from Kashmir, that in some parts of the subcontinent, they have like 30 dishes. He said, we have 46. So some countries, they actually pass laws that you can only serve snacks. You cannot serve food, because it would bankrupt people to hold walimas. And the mashayikh would also discourage it, but it's to serve anything. But the worst of food, even though it's a sunnah, some even say it's wajib to hold, wajib to sunnah or wajib to attend, but the Prophet ﷺ warned that the worst of food is the food of the walima. Why? Because the rich are invited, but the poor are ignored. And it's not just the rich, but the rich, those of status, of standing, etc., but the poor are ignored. And like the poor, you have, for example, you have someone who's a convert, someone who's, they're not poor, but they're not part of your networking plans. They're not part of, I had the misfortune of sitting through one wedding planning taking place and said, no need to invite those guys. Says, they won't give anything. Like if they come, if they give a gift, it'll be cheap. And if they put money in the envelope, it will be not worthy. We want, wedding is an investment. No, it's not. It's a sunnah. It's not an investment. So the poor are left. Right? The believer, and these are opportunities to bring people together. Right? And then the Prophet ﷺ warned, and whoever does not accept an invitation has disobeyed Allah and His Messenger. But the ulama said that this is out of warning, it's not a ruling. So the majority of the ulama said it's a sunnah to attend the walima, it's not obligatory. And that's if there's no excuse. If you have work that day, etc., then that's an excuse. But just saying I'm tired, show up. وأخرج مسلم وأبو داود عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنه مرفوعا أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا دعا أحدكم أخاه فليجب عرسا كان أو نحوه. And in this regard, Abdullah ibn Umar رضي الله تعالى عنه relates that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, if one of you is invited by their brother, let them accept the invitation. Whether it's a wedding or other than that. Again, it's a sunnah. It's a sunnah. Someone invites you, accept the invitation. Unless you have a strong excuse. And this is one of the bid'ahs of our age, that people rarely invite others to their homes. And that's blameworthy. It's an important sunnah, and it is very important you only create communities and networks by inviting people. And inviting people is not limited to family. It's not limited to family, number one. One should have circles of family. And that's not just you meet up with your siblings, but there's also your immediate relatives, but also your friends have rights over you. From the rights is you invite them and that you visit them. Your neighbors have rights over you. People who've done good to you have rights over you. The Prophet ﷺ would continue to send gifts to the friends, the female friends of Sayyidah Khadija, years after she'd passed away. The believer maintains ties. And one of them, so by sending gifts, by remaining in touch with them, by visiting them, by responding to their invitations, by inviting them. But also one of the key sunnahs is that they should not be takalluf in invitations. This idea that you have to have multiple types of main dish and this, that. The sunnah is simplicity, without takalluf, without putting on airs or pretension, without ostentation, but in a manner that honors the guest. And one of the criteria for that, the ulama say, is to serve the like what you would normally eat if you eat in a dignified way, not peanut butter and jam sandwiches necessarily, and slightly better. It's slightly better. And another narration, إِذَا دَعَ أَحَدُكُمْ أَخَاهُ إِلَى كِرَاعٍ فَأَجِيبُوهُ. Right? That if someone invites you even for something small, accept their invitation. Right? Because it's about the act of visiting one another, not it's not about the food. وأخرج البخاري ومسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال حق المسلم على المسلم خمس. In another hadith related by Bukhari and Muslim from Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, the rights of a Muslim upon a Muslim are 5. And such hadith are understood amongst the rights of a Muslim on a Muslim are 5. Because other hadiths mention 6. And the numbers here are illustrative, not limiting. That amongst the rights are these. And these are highlighting some of the social etiquette and social encouragements. Because otherwise the rights are that, broadly, that first, do not harm them. Number 2, fulfill their obligatory rights. And number 3, after that, do good to them. So these are all third level rights, which are do good to them. But they say there's 3 levels of adab in general. They say asasul adab, the basis of adab is that don't harm anybody. Can't do anything else, just don't harm anybody. And just tread lightly on earth. But then know that people have rights over you, know what their right is, fulfill it. And the rights are beneficial and easy. You don't have to visit your uncle and aunt all the time. But where's the reward? The reward is they have a right over you that you visit them when they're sick, that you assist them when they're in need, that you share with them in their grief, you help them in their need. It's not just to show up twice a month and eat their food. Okay? I mean, that's good, but that's very low level fulfillment of rights. So, 3 levels of adab, don't harm them. Number 2, know what their rights are and fulfill those rights. Even many friends, they just become restaurant friends or sports friends or fitness friends or go on vacation together friends. But where are you when they're sick? Where are you when they're in difficulty or need or anything? No. Those are social friends. That's not brotherhood. That's why friendship, they call ukhuwa, brotherhood, sisterhood, right? Because these are bonds as if they were like family, right? So these rights, these are the recommended social rights, raddu salam, responding to their salam. Giving the salam is sunnah. Answering it audibly is obligatory. So do you have to give salam? No, you don't. It's sunnah though. It's sunnah. You shouldn't leave it, but if someone does give salam, you respond audibly. And there's no exception, but not in the mall, but not in the street, but not in the supermarket. And we should not behave like doormats that, but what? Like you're that afraid of, what are they going to do? That's number 1, answering the salam. Second, وَعِيَادَةُ الْمَرِيضِ, visiting the sick. And the sick, particularly if they're family or you have an established relation with them. Family, friends, neighbors have a right that you visit them when they're sick. With the sick, there's a useful demarcation made by the ulama, and I was recently reminded of it some months ago by our dear Sheikh Hamid Slimi, one of the distinguished scholars in Canada, because one of the teachers used to come here, Sheikh Abdullah Siraj, had a major stroke. And he was in intensive care in the hospital. The next day, or the day he had the stroke, people found out, nearly 100 people went to the hospital. The medical staff could barely treat him because there's always people there. And there's still precautions because he's nearly 90, and the other patient was also in a very critical situation. Other patients getting affected, his treatment's getting affected. They're blocking the passageway. They instituted only 4 people can go up at a time, then they made it 2. People would ignore that. People are going up the stairs. And so I wanted to, but how do you deal with this tactfully? It's important. Believers should conduct their affairs through mutual consultation. So I called Imam Slimi, Shaykh Slimi, what do we do? He said, Shaykh Faraz, you have to explain to people that we want the Shaykh to heal. We don't want to kill the Shaykh. So he said, explain to people. I said, so what do you advise? I said, explain to people that you visit the sick when they're healing, not during treatment. Because during treatment, only the immediate family should visit, or someone who's very close to them. Because there, the focus has to be on that you want to facilitate their treatment. There, if you want to do something, help the immediate family, make sure they have enough food, help them financially, see what help they need. But it's when they're healing, the visitation boosts them emotionally, religiously, etc. So that's when it's sunnah to visit. But sometimes even family doesn't visit. I went to visit, my mother was in hospital. So during winter, here at Credit Valley Hospital, I came out as really icy. This elderly lady, she must have been like hovering around 80. Said, excuse me, sir. And I'd ordered because my wife was going to come pick me up, but the roads were very icy. So I said, just stay home. I'll just Uber it back. This elderly lady said, do you mind if I hold on to you? Could you walk me to my car? She voice was also like, a week 8. Said, I didn't have much choice. She held on to my jacket anyways. So she said, I just came out of ICU. I've had 2 hip replacement surgeries. I don't want to have a third. I'm just walking. I said, no, of course, sure. I'll walk you to the car. Help, get her into the car, clear the snow, because there's a lot of snow accumulated on her car. She'd been there for 2 weeks, and she has children in the GTA and grandchildren. She's being released from hospital, and the hospital, of course, because of funding cuts and this lack of societal human concern, just leave an 80-year-old, at the door of the hospital. Go call a cab, whatever. Right. That's not. But this is also where we as a community have social responsibilities. That the sick, we have to have concern for them. Not to show off. This is, Islam incorporated in action. We do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. We feed you only for the sake of Allah. We serve you only for the sake of Allah. These are very important. And the social rights apply, the fuqaha say clearly, to the Muslim and the non-Muslim. If you have non-Muslim relatives, or friends, or neighbors, or work colleagues, or people you've benefited from, they have the same rights over you. They have the same rights over you. وَاتِّبَاعُ الْجَنَائِزِ, and to follow the funeral. To follow the funeral, because there's the responsibility of praying over the deceased, attending Salat al-Janaza, but especially if they're family, or a friend, or a neighbor, or a colleague. You've only completed half the sunnah. You've not fulfilled the sunnah, which is their right over you, till you follow the funeral. And a lot of people take time off work for all kinds of things. Why can't you take a little bit of time to attend the funeral? وَإِجَابَةُ الدَّعْوَةِ, and to answer invitations, as in the way we discussed. وَتَشْمِيتُ الْعَاطِسِ, and that if someone sneezes and says Alhamdulillah, that you respond to this by saying Yarhamukallah. If you sneeze, it's sunnah to say Alhamdulillah. And then it's wajib to respond to it, to say Yarhamukallah. It's wajib, because of many hadiths related to it. Similarly, there's another hadith, وأخرج أبو داود عن عبد الله بن عمر And the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال من دعي فلم يجب فقد عصى الله ورسوله. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever is invited and does not accept the invitation has disobeyed, has gone against. It's not sinful, has gone against Allah and His Messenger. ومن دخل على غير دعوة دخل سارقا وخرج مغيرا. But someone who attends an invitation uninvited has entered as a thief and has left like a criminal. Why? This is, of course, if they didn't want you there. And some places they do that. Some places they do that. Because sometimes you don't discover it. I was invited, there's a family gathering, but I had a class to teach, so my family got there on time. I was a bit of one of those, family has, interesting thermodynamics. So I asked my wife, because I get confused, could you just come to the front? I said, no, right now it's not possible. So I went in, I entered, and she says, we're right at the front, it's easy to find. Went all the way right till the front. I've been in the family almost 30 years, couldn't recognize anybody. Maybe I'm on the, sometimes, weddings also, groom side, bride side. Maybe this is the other side of the family. But then I finally looked up and looked back. It's all Sikh people. There's nobody from our family. So I walked out. I was at the wrong place. But nobody noticed. I got offered to sit down several times, even though I was like in Shaykh garb and they were, they're Sikh. I didn't notice. I was kind of like texting back and forth. My wife said all the way to the front, right corner, whatever. I'm looking around, couldn't recognize anybody. Nobody cares. So sometimes people would slip in to other people's invitations, not proper. Right? Not proper. But then there's some fiqh related to invitations. What if there's haram present? It says, وَإِنْ عَلِمَ أَنَّ ثَمَّةَ لَعِبًا أَوْ غِنَاءً أَوْ نَحْوَهُمَا مِنَ الْمُنْكَرَاتِ لَا يَجُوزُ الذَّهَابُ مُطْلَقًا وَإِنْ لَمْ يَعْلَمْ فوجد ثم فإن لم يقدر على تغييره وكان مقتدا يجب أن يخرج ولا يقعد مطلقا أيضا. So he says, if one knows for sure in advance that there will be impermissible forms of entertainment or music that's impermissible and the like of them of the munkar, of the wrong, then it's not permissible to go there at all. Right? And these, someone asked, people ask a lot about music. I said, listen, I don't listen to music, but I try to be aware of what's going on. So I said, just search what are the top 10, because I said, what's so bad about these Bollywood songs? They've got good themes. I said, okay, just look up what's the top 10 songs of last year and look up their lyrics. Don't listen to the actual song, just read their lyrics. And most of them, they have translation in English. Do you think that's acceptable in our deen? Or acceptable by basic decent human conduct? No. You pay attention to what's being said. Especially, and things have been getting worse and worse. And the values it conveys, the lifestyles of those who engage in it, this is utter corruption. It's not harmless sounds. The first thing the human soul experienced, even before bodies were created, was sound. Souls were brought forth and asked by Allah, Alastu bi Rabbikum, am I not your Lord? So few things affect you more than sound. Was positive sound, Quran, nasheed, a good word, etc., beneficial knowledge. That's why listening has more impact on one's consciousness and retention than reading, according to the vast majority of educationalists. So he says, so if one knows in advance that there'll be the impermissible there, it's not allowed to go. The ulama say this is if this will be the prevalent state. But if one did not know for sure, and one goes, then if you're not able to change it, then if you are someone who is followed in society, you're a scholar or a student of knowledge or a community leader or someone of standing in the community, you're an elder in the community, or even in the family, you're not supposed to stay. You're not supposed to stay. Of course, you do so with dignity, with wisdom, and sometimes one can help reframe things in advance. So many people say, look, you want, I used to actually have a playlist. I don't know what I did with it. It's called Halabi wedding party songs. Because it's very upbeat nasheed. And people just want something happy. There's a lot of stuff like that. But if one's not someone who's followed, right? If one's not someone who's followed, إن لم يكن مقتدى فإن كان على المائدة على مرأى منه لا يقعد وإلا فلا بأس بالقعود والأكل. So, but if you're not someone who is a leader or an exemplar or someone followed either in society or in family, then if the impermissible activity is not at your table or right in front of you, then there's nothing wrong with remaining. Of course, you dislike, you're obligated to hate the wrong in your heart, but then you could sit. But of course, it's better just to step away and come back. Everybody can go to the toilet. Can someone prevent you from going to the toilet? So one of the very useful places to go in general, family politics going on, you couldn't change it, go to the washroom. And the washroom's even better than the toilet, because the washroom, you can even check your phone there. You can do anything in the washroom. Let the storm pass away and then come back. Also helps deal with stress. People step out from weddings, from family gatherings to go smoke and come back. They pretend nobody knows what they did. They don't realize they smell. Just go take a little bit of a walk, make a few phone calls, come back. And you're not that important, that even if you're dressed as a sheikh, nobody really cares. And then he says, وَإِذَا كَانَ الدَّاعِي فَاسِقًا مُعْلِنًا يَجُوزُ أَلَّا يُجِيبَهُ. If the one who's inviting you is openly, uncaringly corrupt, you're allowed not to accept the invitation from the get-go. Now, there's a difference between someone who's irreligious and who's openly corrupt. Especially if they're uncaringly corrupt. There's people who are struggling, etc. I was once invited by one of my friends who's a learned scholar in London, England, to someone's house, and it's a weird house. I won't go into some of the strangest things. I never thought I'd sit in a religious gathering with Marilyn Monroe on one side and Humphrey Bogart on the other, and some African statues in front of me. I'm wondering, what am I doing? Am I even allowed? But this sheikh's far more learned than me. He's a pious man. He told me, just trust me. And even in the gathering, he sort of had my hand in his. And this is a Saudi businessman, and he wanted advice. How do I change myself? I married this non-Muslim lady. The guy was first and only time in my life I've seen a house with retractable, adjustable doors, made of glass, and I don't know how it got frosted. So when we entered, the wall was glass, but then the walls adjusted, but then it got frosted over. And I went in it was the glass itself. I was like, whoa. But there was a purpose behind it. There was a purpose behind it. ثم الإجابة تتحقق بالدخول والقعود فإن لم يأكل فلا بأس به. Answering someone's invitation is fulfilled by attending and by sitting down. Even if you did not eat, there's nothing wrong with it. So sometimes you got a lot going on, but at least show up. You fulfill the sunnah. And if you do that and do some other sunnahs with it, help them out. Take something, or help them with arrangements, help them with bunch of things, and then you go, nobody really cares. والأفضل أن يأكل لو كان غير صائم. And it's best to eat unless you're fasting. So this is one of the issues that, that if we don't act to change the way things are, things just get worse, right? In weddings and family gatherings, etc. But if you take some steps with good character, also to be proactive, you know that something strange is going to happen, or they're suggesting something strange, it should be clear. You don't do it. So I know many religious people in the families, there are certain things that segments of the family do, but they know don't invite these people because they're not going to participate. But because they have good relations with everybody else in the family, they don't mind. They respect that. They respect that. But they also adjust family gatherings to accommodate those who are religious, especially if it's more important to maintain good character when you're going to be tested, when you're going to be questioned. They say, when is it most important to uphold the adab of eating? When you're hungry. The adab of drinking, when you're thirsty. Because you're not thirsty, it's easy to fulfill the adab of drinking. But you're really thirsty, that's when it's most important to uphold the adab of drinking. Same with eating. You're really starving, there's this really nice bun kebab from Ayman Chaiwala. Didn't eat anything all day? Eat it with adab. Right? And that's taqwa. Like you prefer the sunnah over your whim. Similarly, in these places, but the key to it is good character. Don't get angry. Be patient. Keep smiling. Say the good or remain quiet. If they ask you awkward questions, are you saying we're all committing sin? You don't have to answer. One of the things, sometimes we've become socially Bedouin, that we say whatever comes to our mind. No. They say, are you saying we're all sinful? Now, technically, maybe, but no. This, too much honesty. Like this one auntie, she put it, and I don't know, it was my mom. I hope she's not listening. Too much honesty is worse than dishonesty, right? Like sometimes, you have to use a little bit of diplomacy. So you say, Uncle, I have some things to do. Wish I could stay longer. Yeah, because I don't want to be part of this. It was really nice seeing you. That's called discretion. The Prophet ﷺ said that be discreet with them as long as you remain amongst them. It's called mudara, which is that you uphold what is right with consideration of circumstance and context. Okay? Like I was at one guy, I knew this one uncle. I knew when he was pleased with me, displeased with me, and angry with me. Because when he was pleased with me, he called me beta. Beta, how are you doing? Right? When he's a little bit annoyed, he'd call me Shaykh Saab. When he was upset, he'd call me Maulana Saab. Or even Maulana, not even Saab. Means he's not happy. So once there's some ruckus in the family, because we had sort of the NRAs, the newly religious aunties in the family, causing ruckus about something random. And I've never entered a single family argument. And my in-laws are Hyderabadi, and alhamdulillah, they have people have a good penchant to open disputes, or like arguing for religion, even nobody cares about the answer. So what do you have to say about moonsighting? I'd immediately exit either washroom, kitchen, basement, second floor, anywhere except where the argument is. Beta, are Bollywood movies halal? You don't have to answer the question. He knows the answer, I know the answer. Just go somewhere else. Right? Because there's no point in saying something just for the sake of saying it. Likewise, وَالْقُعُودُ عَنِ الْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهْيِ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Failing to command the good and forbid the wrong is from the sins of omission of the legs. That someone is beating up a kid, you don't go and try to stop them, it's sinful. Okay? وَإِعَانَةِ الْمَظْلُومِ, or from assisting someone wronged. وَالسَّعْيِ فِي حَاجَةِ الْعَاجِزِ, or failing to take steps to assist someone who is in desperate need. Someone needs a ride to the hospital. You know who they are. So, and just pretend you didn't hear it. You just keep going. No. Right? وَغَسْلِ الْمَيِّتِ وَدَفْنِهِ, and not assisting in washing the deceased and burying them. If there's no one else, you're in a small town, there's only 3 Muslims. If you don't help, it's going to be very difficult for 2 of them to take care of all of this. It's sinful. وَإِنْقَاذِ إِنسان, or to save somebody. Someone's about to trip over and fall into the well, and you're like, oh well. أو مال بصدد الهلاك بالسقوط, or if there's someone's property that's going to be destroyed. It's at the edge of the balcony. Oh, because people, everything of another is inviolable. Their life, their property, and their honor. So someone took their watch off, left it on the park bench, they're praying, someone picked it up. You can't just let them take it. So I don't get involved in things. No, you're a believer. You have a responsibility. أو الغرق أو الحرق أو نحوها. Likewise, something is going to someone or someone's property is going to drown or burn or the like of it. للقادر من غير ضرر المتعين. If you're able and would not be harmed clearly. Say, oh, what if they do something? No. When's the last time someone told someone, don't steal the watch, and they got shot at? It's not. So a lot of people have unfounded fears too, right? I know part of it is watching too much news, right? They say, okay, there are 10 crimes in Mississauga today. How many? There's over 1 million people. The likelihood of some crime or stuff. There's how many Islamophobic incidents are there per day? It's any incident's bad, but if you just divide it over the population, it's not that likely. إما لعدم الغير أو لعدم قدرته أو لإهماله أو عدم مبالاته لدينه. That the harm, particularly if there's no one else to help, and it could be because, or if you're not able, generally you can't do anything about it. Physically, you couldn't stop this person. Or you are negligent, or you really don't care about your religious duties. So it's a bad matter. Then there are sunnah walking, that is from taqwa. So he says, أما المشي لصلة الرحم والعبادة والزيارة والتهنئة والتعزية فمن السنن المستحبة. As for walking to maintain family or friendship ties, or to visit the sick, or to visit others, whether it be family, friends, neighbors, associates, teachers, people who have done good to you, etc. Or to give someone, to congratulate someone on a birth or a happy occasion, tahni'ah, right? To give people well wishes. Likewise, to give them condolences if someone died. And that's one of the sunnahs. It's not just sunnah to attend the burial, but to attend the aza or the ta'ziyah, which is the condolence. It's sunnah that it be held 3 days, up to 3 days if needed, if many people are going to visit. That's also sunnah. These are the things. The social sunnahs are where the believer is supposed to be, not sitting watching Netflix and re-watching the same series again. Why? Because nothing to do. But you're too busy from these duties. That's a misalignment. ومنها قعود الأجير عن خدمة المستأجر. from the sins of the legs is for someone who is an employee to hold back from fulfilling their service requirements with the one who hired them. Someone hired you to do a job. Well, you don't do it. That's from the sins of the leg, because what you agreed to do, that is a duty upon you. وَالْمَمْلُوكَ عَنْ خِدْمَةِ الْمَالِكِ. Likewise, a servant to serve their master. وَالزَّوْجَةِ عَنْ خِدْمَةٍ دَاخِلَ الْبَيْتِ. Or for the wife from serving inside the house, within the bound. And there's khilaf about this. Some said it's wajib, others said it's a sunnah, but it's not a wajib upon her. Either way, but the least that can be said is serving within the house is a sunnah. It's not an abrogated sunnah. A lot of people think that khalas, times have changed. No, the sunnah is the sunnah. The natural order is the natural order. وَالْوَلَدْ عَنْ خِدْمَةِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ. And for the child from serving their parents, particularly if they're elderly or they need. وَالرَّعِيَّةِ عَمَّا أَمَرَهُ الْوَالِي مِمَّا لَيْسَ بِمَعْصِيَةٍ إِلَّا بِعُذْرٍ. And likewise, the followers from what the leader orders of that which is not a sin. And like a sin, there's not wrongdoing or clear harm. Unless there's an excuse. Unless there's an excuse. And of course, from the wrong is that if it is clearly overbearing. Clearly overbearing. They put an edict that everyone has to paint their house yellow. That's an intrusion on your privacy. You don't have to obey. But if there's general duties, one's duty bound to. And where the public interest is clear, the determination of public interest is on those in power. So you cannot say, well, I don't see what's the difference between driving at 120 versus 100. There's a reasonable thing that would, at least in the Greater Toronto area, would the police stop you if you're going at 106, 107? Would they? On the highway? On the highway, would they? No. Right? So there's something that's clearly accepted, but beyond that, if you're going 112, 115, so that, because the determination of public interest is on those who are responsible for public interest. There are certain things that may well be, that certain occupancy limits that have been asked by certain restaurants. They put an occupancy limit that no more than 5 seated people. But there's clearly lots of space. Then do your best, right? Because there's certain things that are overbearing. There's overbearing. Right? But it's best to consult. So then we're going to, so that was a section on taqwa of the legs. There's a lot of different practical and other matters. Next week we're going to look at the matters of taqwa related to the body in general, okay, that are not specific to a particular limb, and it includes the rulings related to dancing. And we're not going to read the whole discussion because there's a context, and there's also the taqwa related to dress. In religious circles, there was a big discussion in Ottoman times about the issue of dancing. Religious dancing. Because there are groups that did engage in either whirling or swaying as part of dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's people who deemed it permissible. And one of those who are on the brigade of definite prohibition was Imam al-Birgivi. He gets very upset both about any kind of rhythmic motion that would be called dancing, or even swaying, to be honest, right? Deliberate, melodic, swaying to melody. So he explains why, and we'll try to understand what he says. We're not going to read all of what he says because he's very. There's certain things that Imam Birgivi gets very passionate about. This is one of them. But various commentators, the 2 main commentators on his book, both disagreed with his unconditional statements on this, so we'll look a little bit what they have to say. But they're talking in the context of something that is otherwise devotional. They're not talking about, I mean, haram. Someone says, "Is haram dancing okay?" So, what kind of dancing, right? So we're not talking about that, right? Standards have changed a little bit in people's eyes, but the standards remain. So we'll look at that بإذن ta'ala. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Any questions before we close? Someone objected last week in another class. They said, "Shaykh, why were you speaking against Hyderabadis?" I wasn't speaking against Hyderabad. I just mentioned not, something about Hyderabadi biryani. That I have Hyderabadi family. My wife's Hyderabadi, although she's not really temperamentally. I think I probably know more about Hyderabadi culture than she does. But I'm married into a Hyderabadi family. But I said, okay, I will make a public apology to the people of Hyderabad for making jokes about their biryani. He thought it's just because I don't know, he Googled me or something. He knew I was from Karachi. Said I would say the same thing about Karachi biryani, except Karachiites are not as passionate about their biryani. Although Karachiites say it's the best biryani in the world, I couldn't care less either way. And so apologies to them regarding that. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين وبارك الله تعالى فيكم.